Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Gillibrand, Ranking Member Graham, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Anu Bhagwati. I am the Executive Director of Service Women's Action Network, or SWAN, and a former Marine Corps captain. SWAN's mission is to transform military culture by securing equal opportunity and freedom to serve without discrimination, harassment, or assault, and to reform veterans' services to ensure high-quality health care and benefits for women veterans and their families. Military sexual violence is a very personal issue for me. During my 5 years as a Marine officer, I experienced daily discrimination and sexual harassment. I was exposed to a culture rife with sexism, rape jokes, pornography, and widespread commercial sexual exploitation of women and girls, both in the United States and overseas. My experiences came to a head while I was stationed at the School of Infantry at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina from 2002 to 2004, where I witnessed reports of rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment swept under the rug by a handful of field-grade officers. Perpetrators were promoted or transferred to other units without punishment, while victims were accused of lying or exaggerating their claims in order to ruin men's reputations. As a company commander at the School of Infantry, I ultimately chose to sacrifice my own career to file an equal opportunity investigation against an offending officer. I was given a gag order by my commanding officer, got a military protection order against the officer in question, lived in fear of retaliation and violence from both the offender and my own chain of command, and then watched in horror as the offender was not only promoted, but also given command of my company. Many of the women who were impacted by these incidents, including me, are no longer in the military. However, all of the officers who were complicit in covering up these incidents have since retired or are still serving on active duty. I was devastated because I loved and still love the Marines. I wish my experience was unique, but in the last few years of working on these issues, and in the hundreds of cases we handle each year on SWAN's helpline, I've discovered that rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment are pervasive throughout the military. Sexual violence occurs today in every branch of service, in both operational and non-operational environments, in both combat arms as well as support units, and affects both men and women. The Department of Defense itself estimates that 19,300 assaults occurred in 2010, and that while 8,600 victims were female, 10,700 were male. This is a critical point. Military sexual violence is not a women's issue. Sexual assault is widely understood by military personnel who have been overexposed to a culture of victim blaming and rape mythology. So let's be clear. Rape and assault are violent, traumatic crimes, not mistakes, not lapses of professional judgment, not leadership failures, and not oversights in character. Rape is about power, control, and intimidation. Thanks to a surge of pressure over the last few years by advocates, the media, and Congress, military leadership has finally been forced to reckon with the issue of military sexual violence. Some victims' protections reforms have been sensible, like the creation of special victims units, mandatory transfers for victims, or in the Air Force's case, a pilot program which assigns each victim as a designated special victims counsel. And yet, while these measures help a victim after an assault, they will neither prevent sexual violence nor change a culture that still condones sexual violence. Military leadership cannot solve this problem on its own. I urge Congress to enact the following reforms going forward. First, Congress should grant convening authority over criminal cases to trained, professional, disinterested prosecutors. Commanding officers cannot make truly impartial decisions because of their professional affiliation with the accused and oftentimes with the victim as well. In recognition of this fact, a number of common law countries have already transferred case disposition away from commanders to prosecutors, deeming the policy a violation of the right to a fair and impartial trial. Second, open the civil courts to military victims. Civilian victims of workplace crimes, including civilian DoD employees, have one critical avenue for redress currently unavailable to uniformed personnel: access to civil courts. To this day, the U.S. Supreme Court and the federal courts below it continue to maintain that service members are barred from bringing claims of negligence or intentional discrimination against the military, depriving military personnel of remedies for violations of their rights. In the face of this judicial doctrine, Congress must ensure that men and women in uniform can access the remedies available to all other aggrieved individuals under the Federal Tort Claims Act and the Civil Rights Act. Given the prevalence of retaliation against service members who report incidents of sexual assault and harassment, the absence of these remedies for military personnel is especially shameful. I'll close by saying that today we are looking at an institution that desperately needs to be shown the next steps forward. Senators, do not let today's service members become another generation of invisible survivors. Thank you.
This has been a Sunfish production.